Matt, how you doing?
Good. How are you, sir?
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us today. This is episode 94 of Tech Sales Insights, and really psyched to have Matt Handler here today, who I've known for a while. He is president and COO of Coralogix, and definitely will have some fantastic insights. Our title topic today is creative lead generation and value selling, so something that's definitely very needed. We have as our sponsor Sendoso, who were an early adopter of and longtime customer of. Long story short, they're a fantastic gifting platform, and a lot of times people think of it as just swag, but the automation that they put into the CRM and everything else is amazing. And just to give you an idea, they had a recent round that the valuation was, I think, around 600 or 650 million. So certainly very effective and a lot more than just swag, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. Also, for those that are members of Sales Community, thank you so much. If you're not, go check us out. You can go to salescommunity.com, and you'll see on the top we have something summer free. So if you click on that, you can get a free year membership. So by way of background, Matt and I first met each other back in the HP days, which is probably going on 10 years ago or so now. He was a fantastic go-to-market exec with the HP networking business, and then did a lot of work on our global accounts, and has been very accomplished, has done a lot of amazing things over the years. And really, one of several things I've been impressed with is really his double or triple digit growth, not only in early stage companies, but also in large companies. Definitely great in terms of hiring and retaining and developing top talent, and growing and improving high-performing teams. And for those that are not from Boston College, he went to Boston College, so it's been a while, I think, since we had a BC alum. And there you go. And he actually was part of the Presidential Scholars Program, which is basically like the best of the best and the smartest, and I think is probably one of the few or only that I actually know or met. He's also on several advisory boards for interests. He has if it's okay to say, a vineyard up in Napa. So obviously enjoys wine, and there's supposedly sheep and chickens there. And coincidentally, we've just figured out I'm going to be there for a board retreat this weekend. So I'm going to go by and see him Friday afternoon. So looking forward to that. And besides Napa, also lives in Austin. He's a fantastic husband and father, has two daughters, aged 28 and 26, even though he doesn't look that old. So definitely look forward to this. So let's jump into the questions here, Matt, and should be great. So from a selling perspective, you were first technology sales job with Cedar Computer, but you actually had some background in QVC and had a number one product on the Golf Channel or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lifetime ago, 30 plus years ago, which is crazy. But the first real tech job, I was hired just out of college to move to Los Angeles from the Midwest. I'm originally from St. Louis, and I didn't know what I didn't know. This is like 1991. 91, and it was selling HP for a reseller. And I was an SDR and an account executive. They paid me, I think, $300 a week, and then for 90 days, and then I was all commission. And what's interesting, I think, and germane, I don't talk about all this very often, but I had a great sales mentor when I was a young man, and I was fortunate. He ran the company, and the same kind of methodology and tips and tricks on outbound that we used to do in the old days in a very different medium with literal mail and phone calls and a pager.
Yeah.
Turns out it still works today. So I think that's kind of interesting as we're talking about outbound.
That's great. And then maybe just kind of quickly go through your career from there.
Oh, geez. Just been, started out as an individual contributor, ended up, being a VP of sales of that company. We sold it back in, I think we were HP's largest reseller in North America. Sold that in about 96-ish. Was fortunate to work for, as leasing became a thing with IT, we took a company public on the New York Stock Exchange back in 98, first bubble. Saw that one kind of, we got to about 2 billion in revenue. I was what was I? I think I was the president or something back then. And then just from there, got really inside where you and I kind of reconnected years later is on the reseller side. I did a lot of reseller sort of turnarounds and bringing them into the new generation. And,
Yeah.
VP of sales, CRO, CEO of a very large Japanese company here in the States. I was on the board of this company and then came off the board in August of 20 to help run it because I thought we had something different.
No, that's great. So how did that work in terms of, for those interested, how do you kind of get on an advisory board? And then how did it work that then you actually end up going to work there?
It's interesting. The short answer is I think a lot of smart boards will bring people in as advisors and then try to lure them into the job. I mean, that's definitely something I've seen over the years, but I think, it goes with what I call key learnings, which is screw ups. You have to have a lot of key learnings. You have to screw up enough to get successful. And then honestly, if you can really prove that you can scale and execute, there are a lot of financial minded folks, and that's very much needed in our industry, but people that can execute and operate a business, which Randy was great at, is really important. So if you can show that you can operate and execute and drive at the end of the day, revenue and profit, people pay attention. And that's kind of how I got started. They wanted to bring me in as a go-to-market expert.
Oh, great. We actually last week had Kelly Wright, who's the president of Gong, and she was actually on the board. And then in a short period, Carl Eschenbach tells it really well. But they found that was their president was actually right around the table. So
interesting.
That does work out well. So tell us maybe a little bit about Coralogix, and maybe by way of intro, talk about the kind of observability platform space that you guys play in.
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't need to get on this too deeply because I know we want to talk about sales process and outbound and value selling, but Coralogix sits in the same space. It's the observability space. Okay, so every single piece of infrastructure and application kicks off what we call digital exhaust, in the forms of logs and metrics and traces and telemetry data. And the key to observability really is being able to look across distributed architectures, especially in today's world, and understand where you've got performance issues, or if you have an issue, how do you identify and fix it? As everything has turned so digital, there's so much emphasis on applications, customer facing, running, a vast majority of the business. You don't want your customers to tell you something's broken. You want to know before and get as proactive as possible. And the issue for 25 years, Randy, back in the old days when we were working together, is the volumes and the velocity and the variety of all this digital exhaust is just insane. And it's growing so fast. It's actually growing faster than revenue at almost all companies. So we found a unique way to bring down the cost and be able to scale. And we've been validated by the market. We've got a couple thousand customers. We've only been in the market for a few years. Fastest growing company in the space, validated by the investment community. We've got about $250 million in cash. And we've been validated by the analysts. We got Gartner's highest rating and some others. I can't tell you another analyst that just became a customer today. But it's been a fun ride, and it's been fun taking something from a smaller size. I don't usually go Series B, but from Series B to Series D.
Awesome. And what about from a customer perspective? Kind of who do you sell to? What's your ideal customer profile?
Yeah, it's interesting. We compete. I was a VP of sales at a company called Sumo Logic. I ran Splunk's largest global MSSP for a time. So those are the kind of Splunk, Sumo, homegrown elk stacks is the space, and Datadog is in there as well. The customers really changed a lot over the years. In the old days, these logs, as it first started out back in like 2002 with Senator McCain and Sarbanes-Oxley when it first started, they were really about compliance, and the security teams bought them, the CISOs of the world. But what's really transitioned, just as software's moved left, it's now DevOps, IT directors, CIOs, and smaller companies, and SRE, site reliability engineers. So our ICP are these fast-growing companies, I'd say mid-size enterprise, 500 to 2,500. And then we also have a nice product-led growth business for smaller companies in that commercial space that they can sign up on their own. So it's really that mid-size enterprise. It's the SRE directors and leaders and DevOps directors, and actually the dev teams as well.
Great. So in that PLG space, then you'd have kind of individual contributors would sign up, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then is it something where you start, all of a sudden you have, 5, 10, 20 people, and then you see it might be a good size account. Then does that PLG turn into then kind of an enterprise sell?
So that's a great question. My very good friend, one of my best friends, is the chief product officer over at MongoDB, and he started out doing their Atlas program. Same thing, very much, out crowdsourced, and then you bring it up to the enterprise. We're on that journey, but medium answer to your question, yes, that's the play there. It's a little more complicated than it sounds because you get a lot of individual contributors that use their own email addresses. It's hard to enrich that and connect the dots to the actual enterprise they work for. And sometimes, to be honest, they're not the decision makers most of the time, but
Right.
They're a great coach. And what we do is we use them to get inside the organizations and work our way back around, bottoms up and top down.
Oh, awesome. And what about from a competitive perspective?
So we compete with Splunk a little bit. Splunk tends to operate in the really high enterprises and still has a lot of those CISO spends from the old days. We take them out all the time, but we tend to compete most directly with Datadog, Sumo Logic, homegrown Elastic stacks. That's the Elk stack that I spoke of. It's used to be open source, no longer open source, but that's kind of where our bread and butter is. And it's been really nice to see the adoption. We're number one in the market in customer satisfaction by a mile. And it's funny, again, it doesn't really get into our topic, but really quickly for us, everyone already has a product and they have pain with it. It's expensive and it doesn't scale. So our focus is migrating them off a legacy and then being able to help them scale their business.
Oh, great. And with the kind of fundraising that you mentioned, I think Series D recently, 142 million, co-led by Brighton Park Capital, and then Advent International. Advent certainly a big dog, and I think based here in Boston. Yep. So some of the uses of the money is helping to build out the platform, invest in customer support, R&D, but a big focus of it seems to be on expanding 10 or so new markets. Can you talk about that market expansion?
Yeah, it's interesting. I live and die, maybe to a fault, by the magic number, that ratio of sales and marketing expense to next quarter's revenue. I liked, a good company, this is, Matt Handler's opinion, but a good company is 0.75 ratio, ish. A bad example would be 0.5 or below, and 1 and above is kind of that magic number. And it's really important to us as a company. And again, these are my key learnings over the years of screwing things up. We're really trying to thread the needle of smart growth with our company, but not overgrowing and just trying to throw a bunch of salespeople to drive ARR that aren't really productive. And we're all about productivity and optimization. Yeah. So in our case, we've been very, I hope, smartly growing where we should. We started out with just Israel and India back in 19, 2 markets, 1 product, log analytics. And then we expanded to the States in August when I came off the board, and built out a full marketing team. We didn't have any of that. That's when we did our Series B. And then now over the last couple of years, as we've grown, we've got more products. So we've got the logs analytics that we started with. Now we have metrics, which competes directly with Datadog. We've got tracing and that New Relic kind of AppD Dynatrace space. And we've got a really cool security product because I believe every log, every bit of telemetry data is security. You got to know your attack vectors, coming from the security world. So
let me ask, so those kind of the 10 markets, are those product-based markets, or are they geography or industry or what?
Well, so now we've got these 4 products instead of 1. And so that's nice for our cross sell. But then what we wanted to do is expand our markets. So what we did was we opened up EMEA and we opened up the UK, and we've expanded in the United States. So now it's the US, the full US and the Americas. We've got LATAM and Canada. We've got the UK, and then we're in EMEA and Asia Pac.
Awesome. That's great. And so from those kind of the new markets, then you are already there. You've got that baseline, and you're just kind of looking to grow from that existing footprint.
It's interesting, in a brand new market, including the States, this is why outbound is so top of mind for me. And maybe getting back to our topic so I don't drive people crazy. For us, I kind of think of it as, you need to have some aerial assault from marketing. So you do ABM, really understand your ICP, like we talked about, really understand your persona and your value prop. If you don't know your value, you can't succeed, right? So that connection between product and marketing is so key. If you don't have the real value identified, you're selling on features, and that doesn't work. So we do very specific digital ads and target specific personas and companies. Then we follow up with straight up outbound from our SDRs and our reps. Everybody here is an SDR, including me.
Great. So let's dive in then on the first title topic, creative lead gen. So yeah. What are some other things that come in mind there? You start out by saying kind of the digital outreach. So you maybe talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long process, but really, what we have found, and this is from the pandemic. I mean, if you think about it, we launched the US and these other markets in the heat of the pandemic. And I think people were narcotized to email outreach. You and I guarantee our listeners, we get LinkedIn requests every day and in messages. And I just, there's just hundreds of them. So how do you cut through that clutter has been kind of my goal over the last couple of years. And so what we've kind of done and what we found is, and it's kind of crazy, it's like Back to the Future. It's the old things that worked. We are cold calling, and we're cold calling a lot. And we have been really trying to optimize our messaging, and using some of the tips and tricks that I used to use 30 years ago has actually been paying off.
Awesome. And then on the creative lead gen side, so then you're doing that outreach, you're fulfilling the funnel. It sounds like you're going to start working with sales at scales, which is great. So you have those leads coming in. Your callers are kind of doing those reach outs. Any other kind of creative nuggets there on the lead gen side?
I mean, I'll start with I think where we want to get to, and what I'm really focused on is productivity again. You'll hear that as a key theme in my world. So it's one thing to get someone on the phone or in an email or in however you reach them, which we'll talk about. But it's another thing to get them to show up to the meeting. Okay. And that's where Sendoso comes in. So I started when Sendoso first started, I was VP of sales over at Sumo Logic, one of our competitors now. And we started using Sendoso. There is a whole series, and I'm happy to anybody can email me or anytime they want, or LinkedIn with me, but using Sendoso to make sure, and it's not just swag to your point, it's a whole sequence that we run, has brought our ratio. I look at the conversion ratios, how many people show up to the meetings, up from I think at our worst, we were in the low 50% range, and now we're approaching 80. So if you think about it, all the work, all the pedaling of the bike, you like to bike, you're pedaling and your RPMs are 100, but you're only going 10 miles an hour. That doesn't do great. But if you can get the gearing working and go 20 miles an hour, It drives a lot more pipeline conversion. So that's one. That's important. Okay, that's a key learning, a good key learning. The other one is it gets back to, how do you get opens on these emails? How do you get opens on your LinkedIn messages? And what does that messaging look like? And we've really just gotten to the point where you have to be creative. You have to understand. I mean, this is all stuff we all know, but people don't do it anymore. Knowing the business, connecting to something in the business value on their 10K or their press releases that resonates with your audience. Know your audience, know the company, do the research. It actually works, and you get the opens. And then we just are relentless in a good way about making sure we're advertising to that person. They see Coralogix in that very specific space. We save money because we're not blasting it. Then they say, oh yeah, I've heard of you guys. Our folks get through on the phone. We follow up with Sendoso. We follow up with a calendar invite program. And we just make it as easy as possible for people to come to the meeting. If they hear us, we've got a really legit chance.
Oh, that's great. You just need the at bat, right?
Just need the at bat. And you know this as well or better than anybody. We both come from a channel side of us as well, even going all the way back to HP. The channel's great for getting at bats, and it's wonderful. And honestly, it's the best way to scale. In this particular segment, we tend to deal with not a lot of sell-through resellers. They just don't exist. A little bit on the security side. Everybody is more of a consultant. So we've had to do this without a major channel other than Europe and the rest of the world. And, that's been a little challenging unto itself and made me really focus on this.
Oh, great. I should have mentioned before, so for those watching along or listening, you can see us or hear us. We cannot see you, but through LinkedIn, I know sometimes people struggle with it, but you can post any comments that you have or certainly any questions, so we encourage that. And we have Tucker behind the scenes, as always, able to pull those questions or comments up. So feel free to do that. And as a reminder, we have Matt Handler, who's the president and COO of Coralogix. So before we move on to value selling, anything else to put a wrapper on creative lead gen?
No, I mean, I think the last bit is, I'm originally from PTC, the land of medic and inspecting what you expect from Jack Napoli and friends. I think that my main key learning is you have to be upfront with your sellers, including SDRs, about why they're doing what we want them to do. And that we are transparent. We use Clary and Salesforce, but we build out dashboards for activity. How many calls we're making? How does that work through outreach? What are the sequences? What's the conversions? Where in the earliest stage pipeline, even including activity, are we making progress? If we go from 60 to 65%, that's great. If we're down to 50, how does the messaging work? How do the sequences work? And make that transparent to the whole company. We all surround it. We make a game out of it. We have Slack channels and contests all the time. We know it's hard work, but we try to make it a little competitive and a little fun. And at my level, as the CRO side of my president, is I inspect this thing weekly, not quarterly, not monthly, and make sure that we're on top of it.
Oh, that's great. So Colette says relationships are key. So thinking about the lead gen side, right? So that's doing cold outreach to people that they've not built relationships with. We've been in the Zoom world and kind of everything else. So kind of what do you see in terms of some good best practices that your team does kind of once they get that initial meeting, once they get initial sale, what are they doing to kind of, solidify that kind of relationship?
I think there's a couple sides to this, Colette and teams. I mean, really, from my standpoint, there's how do you make a relationship out of a cold call? Yeah. I mean, starting from the very beginning, and then what do you do with the customer once you have them? I think it's, the one thing that we teach here is that you have to be authentic. So if you get someone on a cold call, and Randy, we're out and you're barbecuing or you're with your family, my team honestly says, listen, I know I caught you on a cold call. This is my job, right? I have something that I think is absolutely germane to you guys. Give me 30 seconds. And if you don't like it, one of two things, you can tell me to screw off and we will actually take you off our list. Or you can say, hey, this is interesting. Let's go. Can you give me 30 seconds? Okay. And we always say, could you help me out? I think human nature, this started back from my sales mentor when I was 21 years old. The human nature is when you ask for help, people, it takes a very unique person to tell you to screw off. You know what I mean? It's just a thing. So that's number one. So building instant relationships of, I know your company. I did a little research. I think you're the person. Give me 30 seconds. Now on the other side, it's a little bit more normal, but we did something here different at Coralogix. I don't know if everybody can do it, but we have our in-app help is not just an operator. It's a level 3 engineer. We respond to people contractually in 2 minutes or less, and we resolve issues, but not issues with our product, issues they're having in under an hour to resolve it. And right now, our average response time is 18 seconds, and it's gotten better scaled to hundreds of thousands, to 20s and tens of thousands of customers. So post-sale, we've got that covered with unparalleled customer support. Pre-sale, getting that instant, hey, give me 30 seconds is really what we focus on.
Oh, that's great. And then what about the whole, companies always struggle with the whole config, price, quote aspect of things. Have you figured out a way to kind of get that done fast as well?
We follow, this gets back to PTC. I can't ever get away from the things that Chapdelaine McMahon, Jack Napoli, all these guys were part of my background, helped me with. But we follow a very specific process here. We lay it out for our customer in our first real discovery call or demo. If we get to that, we show them the path that they're going to take based on a couple thousand customers of best practices. We show them that there's an engineering workshop where we work out use cases together, and we build all that together. So it just flows sort of organically as we go.
Oh, awesome. So we have from a LinkedIn user, I'm interested to know what % of new business leverages referrals, considering the customer rating of Coralogix?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll give you the dark side of the answer and then a more positive one, okay? The dark side is people don't last a long time in their jobs these days. So a lot of it is we do a great job with someone and then they'll move to another company, whether it's positive or negative, right? Especially in a recession. So we do get a decent amount of business from our actual champions going somewhere else. There's I got to think of it, Randy. I'll look it up and maybe I'll put it in the chat in a minute. There is an actual program that we bought that tracks our contacts as they move across their careers. Okay. And it's been really, really helpful. So that's a good question. The other side of things is, having a good board members, having somebody like Mike Gregoire, who's on our board at Brighton Park, who was the CA, he was the CEO of CA for so long. That really helps. And then last but not least, we finally have got events again. And we just love events. We kill it at events. Our stuff is very obvious to see. So that's been really working for there. But we leverage our customers. The one thing that we do also that I would recommend to everybody, we have a whole program around NPS scoring. Our customers, are they happy on onboarding NPS? Are they happy with the product? I check it in the middle. Our CSMs are constantly working on the health of our customers. And then we are always working towards getting references and peer reviews. So people, if they're happy with us or unhappy, we trust it that they go out and tell others about us via like G2 and Gartner peer reviews.
That's great. And my daughter, who's younger, had one of her first customer dinners last night that the kind of the outside rep brought her along to. So we're kind of talking about it afterwards. And I said, "Well, did you get any referrals?" She's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, you're there, you're hanging out, dinner, nice, obviously. Just say, who else do you person know that we can go sell to?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "All right, making mental note. That's one of like several things that you got."
You know what the other thing is? People forget on the sales side, sales and marketing, it's like cats and dogs, right? I don't know. They don't always get along, but they need to. And that's why me at my level, I really try to integrate them. But people forget, or I forget, let's put it that way. When you're negotiating a deal in the sales teams, and I'm talking to my VPs in sales, when someone wants a discount, I absolutely make sure that we get a customer referral for sure as part of the negotiation. And then honestly, what we've been doing, and that's a great question, whoever the LinkedIn user is, we said, "Hey, do you have anybody else in your network that might be interested in the solution?" And it actually works.
Yeah, totally. Especially new markets. I mean, I had early days of EMC. I was in England, I was in Australia. I mean, you're starting out with, no customers or one or two, you got word of mouth is the best way to do it. So different question here from Neil. What are some of the Sendoso gifts that you're seeing the most impact and replies from? One I'll mention that was really impressive. We had, I don't know, some number of months ago, Ashby Lincoln, who runs a great solution provider VAR called Veristore based in Atlanta. And he said they would do a program when anybody would have a baby. So they'd have these different onesies, and they would have, Veristor, the company name on it, and it would have the packaging would have their company name on it. And he said that's like, there's lots of examples, but that's one that stuck with me. He said, hey, we get so much mileage out of it, and the people send pictures of their babies in the onesie. It's just so creative. But anyway, go ahead. What are some things?
No. I mean, that's great. That's the other thing. Okay, Sendoso is great, and they give you myriad options to kind of think about. Okay, but you need a strong marketing person and to really think about what makes sense. In our world, a couple of things have been great. They're not babies, but I guess some people consider them fur babies or something. Our dog bowls have been killing it. Okay, so we compete against Datadog, so we have a whole campaign against teach an old dog new tricks, and we do these.
No way.
They've been great. You and I were talking about Yetis or Swells. So in the world of all of these beverages, like the malt beverages, we did some koozies that wrap around those kind of thinner cans, and we did a bunch of Yetis. And it's amazing to me that people really care about this stuff, but they do. And we're trying to be creative, much like the authenticity of our SDRs and our sales reps. We sell some pretty funny t-shirts. We've got, we're a platform, and we compete against tools, and we consolidate tools. So I have shirts that say, don't be a tool, be a platform. We try to be a little bit humorous, and that's who we're about.
Oh, that's awesome. So thanks for that, Neil. So moving on, and definitely encourage the questions to keep coming. So thank you to Colette and LinkedIn user and Neil. So now maybe moving on to kind of value selling. So what are some of your thoughts there?
So I think this is the core of everything. It doesn't get talked about enough, or if it does, it's very esoteric. My deal is, how do I really make that actionable? Okay. So bear with me. This is usually about I was an old journalist, so this is usually a 6-minute soliloquy. I'll break it into pieces and try to make sure that it's bearable. But here's where I come at with value selling. Okay. At the end of the day, you have to have all of your business units across go-to-market integrated and integral with each other. Okay. So I started a little earlier. Product has to be so good at understanding what the platform can do that we can extract what that value is, not just the features, not the speeds and feeds of the old days or whatever that is. Okay. And if product does that well, and they're bi-directional and are able to get feedback from our customers, especially at a smaller stage company, we can build the platform out well. Then you move over to marketing. Okay. Marketing must understand that value from products, so we know our ICP and our personas. Otherwise, you're fishing in the wrong place and you're not using the right bait for the right fish. Yeah? So that's critical on the marketing side. Then as you go farther down on that side of things, if you have good competitive intelligence from product, and product marketing can articulate that, you can use really cool tools like Gong, or in my case, I just switched to Wingman, which is a competitor of Gong that got bought by Clearly. And you can build out battle cards. Okay. And those battle cards can help you when you're doing what you need to do to compete, and build out playbooks. Without enablement and without solid playbooks, you're screwed, right? You could throw a bunch of salespeople at it, but it's going to be manic. So building out the right playbook, which leads to, if you can't teach your own people how to fish, how do you teach a channel? So that lets you build out your channel. Then you go over to sales. If you get into sales, being transparent, inspecting what you inspect, we actually integrate the value selling and medic into our Salesforce and Clary. So what's your, every conversation, and it's one thing to have those fields, but every conversation that we have, they're frontline managers, second line managers, CRO, me, we are speaking the same language of, do you understand what the current situation is, the pain? How do they measure that? What's the future state? What is it that they're looking for, and how does that apply to their business? How do we do it? How do we do it better? Who have we done it before? We run those conversations all the time. And around that, did we meet the economic buyer? Do we have a champion? Do we understand the decision process? All of those things are built in. And then you keep going over. If you get to finance, I work Randy, I think we've got a meeting coming up. Comp plans need to be tailored to your business. I think where companies screw up is as soon as they see a little slowdown in the economy or the business, they up new logo, new logo, new logo, and they forget someone's point. What about keeping your customers happy in SaaS? Because you need that upsell and cross-sell. The biggest mistake I see is finance being in a vacuum, thinking that they need to grow your new logo when you really got to have a comprehensive plan across every function to get go-to-market. And then last but not least, it goes all the way over to HR. We are a hero brand. If you want to talk about our brand, we're a disruptor, okay? We can't hire somebody, Randy, let's say we couldn't hire somebody that does global accounts at HP that has one account that they've worked on for 10 years and that's their thing. We need hungry people that'll kick open doors at every level of the organization, not just sales. And once you kind of understand all of that, the value that we bring, that comes out in our messaging, it comes out in our brand, it comes out in our swag, it comes out when we're on doing events. And that's kind of how we incorporate that into our business. That was 4 minutes. I did a little better than usual. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
So on the back on the value selling side, so like for me, I usually will say, okay, if you're in the elevator and you have 20 seconds and the CFO is there, they're a customer, what are you going to say that you do? Or a deal that you're trying to get done, what are you going to say that you're going to do? And it's got to be all around things that a CFO cares about. It's not the technical speeds and feeds. Maybe there's some compliance issues, but it's how you're going to help generate revenue, how you're going to help them save money, how you're going to help them get a competitive advantage. And to me, from a value selling perspective, that's usually what nails it. So maybe if I put you on the spot, I'm the CFO, what are you going to say about Coralogix?
I mean, in our case, it's really pretty simple, right? And we've been I think what's more important than what I'm going to say to you is that I know that there are multiple messages based on personas, right? Like to your point, to a CFO versus maybe someone that's hands on keyboard. That's number one. Number two, we're always checking our messaging, listening to it on Wingman, listening to it in practice sessions, and A/B testing what message works, each time. So, I mean, in our case, it's a very simple message. Like I said, I try to keep things simple. It's that we're a better mousetrap. We're faster, better, and half the price of anybody in the business. And we scale and help you grow your business, because data grows faster than revenue. Let's bring that curve down. And we do it in a way that makes it kind of seamless to migrate over to us. It's that simple, and that we work the way that they do. They can use this, more people use it, the business gets integrated, and we've got some of the best names in the business, including, some of the names I can't mention, but we have the largest customer in the entire world that we want a POC with, so we're doing 15 petabytes a day with a customer. Now think about that. That's like 300 gigabytes a second that is running through this pipeline that we've created. That's insane. So quick customer reference, quick value to a CFO. They care about the money. That's the pitch to the CFO, and it's less complex and it's not going to disrupt the business.
Oh, that's great. Now, previously you also touched on the importance of compensation plans. Some would call it, sales performance management. So I assume you're a firm believer on comp plans drive behavior, and they have to be simple.
My daughters, so my oldest daughter lives in Australia for a long time. She's in tech, not in sales. And my youngest daughter is in commercial real estate. They will tell me right now, if I just said compensation, their answer would be drives behavior. I've been compensating my daughters since they were this big. They were very competitive in sports. So I absolutely believe that compensation drives all behavior. I'd like to think that we're in this, to better the world, which there is altruism involved, but I tell my team all the time, we're not curing cancer, solving world hunger, but making sure your compensation, like I said earlier, is aligned with where you want to go as a company. Okay. Making sure that in the world of SaaS, let's say, that we really care about our customers and that there's enough compensation across the stack that we have our best talent working on our existing customers because they're so hard to get. We've been really fortunate, and this is a little commercial for us. Our net retention here, included just upsell of one product, because now that we have 3, is absolutely best in class. We got up to 150%. I think the only company that's done it at our scale is Snowflake. I think Datadog got to the 120s. So we've had less than 1% churn. So that's 1. 2, incentivizing the right things. We make it fun. We pay well. I don't pay well. I don't pay considerably over market for the initial OTE. I hate that. It's a personal thing for me. I want someone who's hungry to work here. We make sure that the quotas are great, that the territories are great. And then as soon as you get over your quota, we absolutely crush it with accelerators. I've got 4 or 5 reps that closed out their quota in Q1, okay, which is good or bad, depending on how you look at it. And they're making 25% commissions now on new business.
Great.
Oh, by the way, Randy, last bit on that. We also make sure, what are you commissioning on? We call upsells and cross sells new business, because I want to continue to expand in our customers. So it's picking the right things and making sure you're aligned as a company at a leadership level, not just a sales leader or a marketing leader. It has to be at the highest level of the company to be compensating the right activities, you know?
Yep, totally. And in terms of tools that help, probably better not to say, we have a call after this about that, but you're looking at saying, okay, from a tool based, how can you find, kind of, for lack of better words, a commission platform that can be flexible, people know what's going on, they can check it, it's easy, things like that. So being able to have a good kind of automated system and tracking system, so sales teams, reps aren't worried about, hey, how or where, when am I going to get paid? It's just all right there, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I think in our past, we've been not able to affect everything, even at your level. It was really difficult in some of my jobs and for some of my people to understand how the hell they were getting paid, and it would take months. Do you remember? I mean, it was, after we would send out commissions, you'd have to deal with the reconciliation for like 3-4 weeks, right? So I having an ability to have a clear comp plan, that's one thing. Having an ability to have to show what you got paid on and why, that goes all the way back to Salesforce. That goes all the way back to having something like an Exactly or whatever it is. We're just looking to implement that now. Where it becomes really complicated for me is we have multiple products now. We have spiffs going on all the time to spiff that behavior. We've got accelerators. We've got quarterly plans, monthly plans, and we just want to make sure it gets to be really onerous on sales apps unless you have a platform. Yeah. So we're just starting that now.
Yeah, I remember several meetings when I was at HP, Dave Donatelli, who we both know and I work for. So we go through, the team, finance ops would, go through all this fancy stuff, and we had, up the wazoo comp plans. So I try and short them down, make them simpler. So I would go through and I'd say, okay, Dave, so you realize then this global account manager is not going to go sell storage because they're not going to get paid on it. You're just like, the different thing, like, these people are like, you're just such a rubber stamp. I'm like, all right, but you got to figure out what's the behavior you want. You want to have them sell, get paid on whatever it is that you want to have them sell. So we've seen those movies.
It's not that deep, but where I think things get complicated is when, you get finance involved too deeply, and you had to read through your comp plan and understanding how you get paid and point percentage this and that. It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah. You can't keep track of it. No. And then speaking of tools on the value selling side, are there any, everything that you just talked about, is that just kind of the Matt Handler method, or do you actually use any platforms or tools there to help facilitate that?
I think command of the message is probably the best out there. Those are old PTC guys, I think, as well. I've done it for so long and lived it for so long that I don't really use them too much anymore. What I will use companies like that, I think I forget Jack Napoli's company that does the medic, what they call it. I'll think about it in a minute. But we use them a lot of times in kickoffs for training to help people really understand the medic and value selling side. And then I'll run an exercise. Now, I didn't do this here because we started kind of from scratch, but if I come into an organization and I'm trying to accelerate it and do a little tweaking, I'll bring in somebody like the command of the message folks. We'll do a good way of looking at a seminar and a 2-day workshop of what is our messaging today? What is, are we getting the value out of it? Do we have a good elevator pitch? Those kinds of companies are great, I think, when you have an existing sales force and you want to do better and accelerate, So in this case, I just used what I know.
Gotcha. Great. So time flies here when you're having fun. Colette, I didn't mention before, she says marketing collateral given at events really helps to spread your brand exponentially. Totally agree, Colette. So maybe for a last question here, Any PG Randy stories?
I mean, I think it goes back to inspect what you expect. My first global leadership QBR, it was you and Donatelli, I believe it was. I think it was in Barcelona. I had, it was my first time meeting you, and everyone said, you got to be ready for Randy. Randy is going to drill into your business. He knows everything that's going on. And I was like, okay. And before I went, somebody had gone that did not know their business. And, I know you well now. You weren't anything other than honest. And it was open inspection, but it taught me a lot because this person almost cried. I mean, they just didn't know what they didn't know. And you can't know you have to know your business. Yeah. And so, I was furiously going over all my stuff and trying to be ready. But I think my key learning from that was if you know your business, somebody like Randy, when you get into a QBR, you gave me amazing advice on like, hey, why don't you look at this? Why don't you look at that? And it gets back to having, when you're comfortable that I know what I'm doing, or that your reps know what they're doing, or that your leaders know what they're doing, and you can speak a language about value selling, just to bring this all back home, hey, Matt, do you understand this? What about this? How can I help you with that? It changes the conversation from just inspection to helping them close deals. And that's my, I have others that aren't PG, but I'll leave it at that.
All right. Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah. Always with, QBRs, it would always amaze. I know people would spend way too much preparing QBRs for me. I would hate it, but would always say, look, you shouldn't be preparing. You should know your business. Right. And then the value of doing the QBR isn't as much of what I get out of it, but who's ever presenting or putting it together should get a lot out of it. And if you're not, that just defeats the purpose, which I think totally, you see a lot. And I've got this, I might be old school, and I'm just making a note right now. Because I have this, Tucker and I have a backlog, I think 30 or 40 things, but once a week I do this. I might be old school, but it just, all this stuff that you just see and hear these days, just is just crazy. Anyway, so thanks for the compliment. And you certainly were.
I need a favor. If anybody is actually listening out there, we are hiring. I saw a question about introducing.
Oh, yeah. From LinkedIn, it says, great messaging around comps, spot on, Matt Handler. And Medic and Forrest Bravo would love to introduce you someone spectacular for your team. So definitely you can feel free to message him. You can message me. I'll forward it to him, whatever you want. But great way to do a final. So what roles are you hiring for?
We just hired 2 heads of the East and the West in the States, but we are hiring AEs, SEs. We need them. We've grown smartly. It's a great comp plan, as we talked about. And we're hiring in England, France, Germany, and the Nordics. So that's kind of our world right now. We're pretty set everywhere else. Wait. Singapore.
There you go. Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, Tucker, thanks for your help behind the scenes. Matt, you've been fantastic. Really appreciate it. Because my voice is down here. So anyway, everybody have a great rest of week. Thank you to Sendoso for sponsoring it. Some great snippets here around that. Great input around value selling, around lead gen, a lot of different other sales best practices. And a reminder, if you're not a member of Sales Community, you can join for free. Just go to salescommunity.com. It says some are free. And you'll be able to check out Sendoso and some other of our great sponsors there as well. So Matt, take care. Have a great rest of the week, and definitely look forward to seeing you Friday. Okay. And don't hang up because Tucker shuts it down, and then we do a little recap.
Okay, no problem. Sounds great. Go.
All right, thanks, everybody.